Bonjour, hi there, and welcome back to another episode of Online Teaching with Jay, the 2020 experience. In my last episode almost 2 months ago, I gave you an overview of what an online teaching and learning environment looks like for two teachers at home with two children. Today, I'd like to update you on a couple of things. Number one, briefly how our online teaching and learning schedules changed the day after I posted the last episode. And number two, to summarize some key points that have come out of 10 weeks of online teaching during this COVID-19 pandemic crisis. When I last posted on April 6th, I said, fortunately, our schedules don't overlap too much, so we can make everything work out. Well, wouldn't you know it, the very next day, everything changed. My spouse was asked to provide more online time to her students, and Dee switched from just having 4 online classes per week to 3 online classes per day. We soon realized that this amount of screen time for a 6-year-old was not very healthy, so we opted out of one of the classes, preferring instead to guide him through the material that his teacher was posting on Google Classroom. Unfortunately for R, and also because of the short attention span of a 2-year-old, after initially participating in some of his 40-minute Zoom sessions offered by his nursery, we completely gave up. Now, despite some overlaps in our schedules, we are making things work out in any case. What else has happened over the last 2 months? On Wednesday, April 29th, Turkey extended school closures until the end of May. And then, on Monday, May 18th, they extended online learning until the end of the semester on June 19th. So now it's less about managing a routine than just sustaining the energy to keep going until the end. Okay, let's move on to topic 2. When I set out with the idea of these episodes, I wanted to capture and share with fellow teachers the process of adapting to online teaching. In this episode, I'd like to reflect a bit on a few key points, and these are also points which are pointed out in the articles that I've posted in the description below. Who knows, some of this may be something you've felt too and that is familiar to you. The first point is that we haven't transitioned to any of the multiple official definitions of online learning. Setting up online learning usually takes time, and it's supported by an IT team that helps you construct a well-thought-out course design, which according to the source I'll quote next, takes about 6 to 9 months to do so. If you've already taken any online courses or MOOCs, you'll know what a well-designed course looks like. But for most of us teachers who were thrown into the field of online teaching in March 2020, it came as a last-minute directive, and we had at most 6 to 9 days to be prepared, if even that. Here's how one article put it. Faculty might feel like instructional MacGyvers, having to improvise quick solutions in less than ideal circumstances. No matter how clever a solution might be, and some very clever solutions are emerging, many instructors will understandably find this process stressful. A colleague of mine shared this article with me, and it defines what we're doing as emergency remote teaching, which is a new definition. Emergency because it's during a time of crisis and we're not at home by choice. Remote because we're not teaching from an office designed for an online environment, but rather from a living room or a bedroom or, if you're lucky, a home office. The same goes for students who haven't chosen to take an online course, and they're doing all of their schooling from the place where they usually just sleep or do homework. The second aspect of all of this is that very few countries have any plan at all for online teaching. Some countries may have online platforms in place with distance learning materials, but none that I know of have a concrete handbook on what teachers should do if schools are closed for an extended period. In this Online Teaching with Jay episode, I mentioned a few articles that could serve as a guide. But the reality is that regardless of how many guides you read, nothing can fully prepare you for online teaching except for the experience itself. Let's be frank, this is a time-consuming experience because everything you've ever known about classroom teaching gets thrown out the window. There may be fewer discipline issues online, but a lot of energy is spent readjusting curriculum to keep lesson plans engaging for students. Here's a great quote from another article. I did a few online lessons for various schools and saw the problem close up. When the pupils weren't engaged, they would drift away, and, not having them there in front of you, you couldn't bring them back into the circle. Our skills and experience as teachers prepare us to deal with boisterous classrooms, to move around or get closer to students so we can refocus their attention, to plan activities that bring students together, and that, if successful, reward us with the aha moment of discovery when we see it in their eyes. Without a physical classroom environment, there's a need to reinvent the wheel in order to keep students motivated. As Becky Supiano points out in her article, which I'll delve more into next, working hard in a job that's been stripped of its best parts is tiring. Now the final key point. If students and teachers have had 6 weeks to adapt to online teaching, why do they feel more emotionally and psychologically drained than at the beginning? To answer this, I'd like to point to an article that explains why Zoom is so exhausting, but could easily apply to Google Meet too, specifically if you've added the grid view extension. Supiano, the author of the article, provides a range of expert advice that generally leads to the same conclusion. Spending time on a conferencing platform is a full assault on our senses. What is it exactly that's so depleting about interacting with a grid of faces on video chat? Heavy users and experts in psychology and communication point to a number of factors. The body language and other cues that we expect but can't access. The way we monitor our own appearance. The stimulation of staring into faces at close range. The inability to take a break, move, or change our surroundings. I recently asked my students why they had started turning off their video when they were on Zoom. They listed the same reasons as in the article, saying, "I don't like it when all these other faces are looking at me," or "it's easier for me to focus when I don't constantly see myself." This time spent on conferencing platforms clearly pushes our brains to overheat as it tries to make sense of the virtual communication going on and how to respond to it. For me, the issue that exacerbates all of this is another great teacher trait: empathy. In Supiano's article, the expert Giampiero Petriglieri says, "I think the exhaustion is not technological fatigue, it's compassion fatigue." It seems that the further we continue with online teaching, the more emotional energy we expend trying to develop ways to engage students, but also to help them cope with the online environment. So where does this all leave us? Clearly, this period of emergency remote teaching is a challenge for all of us. And in moving forward, it will be essential for teachers and students to acknowledge the fatigue and find ways to alter learning so that education, without the dangling carrot of grades or progress reports, continues to be an attractive concept. In the comments below, I'd love to hear back from any fellow teachers who are experiencing the same thing, on whether they've felt any similar issues with online teaching and how they've dealt with them. Thanks again for watching another episode of Online Teaching with Jay, and as always, stay safe, stay inside, wash your hands, and practice social distancing. Au revoir!